Hey people, it's Steel Gamer, and this is basically a Diablo 3 video, and I want to get up front that the situation that I'm talking about in this video is so complex because there's so many layers to it that the phrase "don't beat a dead horse" can't really be used here. I actually literally have to pound the information in over and over and over again, so I'll be repeating myself consistently just to get the information in the video so people can follow what's going on. Second thing is that I've made these types of videos before. If you skip over anything in the video or you skim through it, you're going to be lost in what the hell's going on. And I've had people do that before. I said, you can't skip over anything. What did they do? They skipped over it and then tried debating with me about the information in the video that they didn't have. So this isn't to get people to watch the video. This is simply stating, if you're going to follow what's going on, you have to watch the entire video because there's pieces of information that you need to have in order. You have to have all the information in order to follow what's going on. So that being said, let me get into this, and not going to be looking at the camera. I'm going to be playing my game for a little bit as I'm going here, because I'm not going to, be bored here. So, or I don't want to become boring with this. All right, so the first thing I'm going to get out of the way is that, as the title of the video states, there's information in Diablo 3 that people use that they're incorrect on because of misinformation over the actual on instead of how it actually works. So let me clear that up about what I'm talking about. For starters, in order to understand this, I have to back up and explain that I've actually had somebody ask me, "Are you going to tell 1 million people that they're wrong?" My reply to that was, and I've said this before in multiple videos, if a group of people are all getting their information from one place or, a couple of sources, and the sources that they're getting their information from is either wrong, is missing information, or is completely incorrect, or, it's not completed, then 1 million people are wrong. Yes, because what gamers seem to think is that a mass consensus or a group agreement somehow makes a fact. So that is simply disproven because if I show a red car and I convince 1 million people that car is blue, is the car blue? No. 1 million people all agreeing that the car is blue is not going to change the fact that the car is not blue. It's actually red, despite no matter how many people agree with it, unless the car itself is actually changed to blue. So the fact of the matter is, gamers that think because they're all in agreement in a mass consensus works, that they're right, and that's part of what this video is about. So this is about how the misinformation actually hurts the game and the gaming community in general. Now, normally people say, well, why is that a problem? It itself is not a problem, but what happens here is if people are using information incorrectly and then somebody comes along and says, hey, you're using this wrong, here is how it actually works, the mass consensus group bash the shit out of the person and they drag their name through the mud, and it slanders the person. So anytime anybody tries, sees their name, they automatically get discredited before they can even open their mouth. And that is where the problem comes from. The information itself isn't the issue. It's what people are using the information to do to people that is the problem, and that's the whole point of these videos. So if you're in that type of situation where an entire community is using something wrong, you'll never convince them otherwise because they've already got it in their head how it is. However, it is more beneficial to have backups or be able to back it up with actual facts. And again, that's not going to matter anyway because a community that's already had it in their head that something is blue despite it being red, it doesn't even matter if you show it red. They're still going to tell you it's blue anyway. So this isn't about who's right, who's wrong. This is about what's accurate and what isn't. Now, a bunch of people that are all wrong, when somebody tells them they're wrong, shows them it, will still tell the person's wrong. So you can show that these people are lying 18 different ways, and they will still go out of their way to tell people not to listen to the person who's right, but who's correct, who has facts, but to still listen to us because even though we're lying. So they want to listen. They want to convince people to listen to 18 liars over somebody that's correct, despite the facts being there, or somebody disproving the facts. So now that that's out of the way, let me get to one of the main points I'm talking about here. Now, there is things in the game in Diablo 3 that you can disprove the way people are doing it with math. But then there's things in the game that can't be disproven or proven with math, but the situation itself and the outcome disproves what they're saying. So I'm going to be going over both Primal and how the game works with Primal, and then I'm going to show how Rift, I made a video about, rifts and, obtaining items in a rift and things like that, and how people are looking at the math on that wrong, because the math can be proven simply that people are looking at them obtaining items in a rift incorrectly. And I'll be using an actual math problem that was used for this type of thinking to disprove that the way people are doing things are wrong. I know that's a little confusing. So let me start by going over the Primal, because that's a very simple situation to correct. Now, in the forum, I'm not going to say where it is, and I'm not going to bring attention to these people's names. But let's put it this way. In the forum, it is still, people are under the delusion that bots somehow have a higher probability of getting Primal. Groups of people that invest hours and tons of hours in the game are more apt to get Primals than somebody else. Now, on the surface, that would appear to be true, but that's the surface level. But if you actually dig into it, you will find that all of that is totally false. And even though the math, you can't use math to disprove or prove it on either end, you can use a situation in the game to disprove that Primals don't work the way people think they do. Okay, so let me explain here by saying, if you have 15 items and somebody has one item, the average person, because of how the mentality of this game is and the misinformation people use, the automatic thing people are going to say is the person who goes through 15 items has a higher chance to get a Primal compared to the person who has one item. And that is 100% false. That information that people have been fed or start seeing is wrong. And here is why. People are under the assumption that the game pools items, and that 15 items, you have 15 chances to get a Primal. That is 100% incorrect, and that is not how the statement is. It is 15 items, yes, but it's 15 individual items. So people going through 15 items on trying to get a Primal is the equivalency of somebody going through one item. Now, people, again, aren't going to understand that. That is because they don't know how to step back and understand the situation, and this is what I'm talking about. People refuse to accept facts. Okay, how the game works when it comes to determining whether or not an item is a Primal is there is a 0.1% chance any legendary in the game can become a Primal. And that legendary can come from anywhere. A breakable object, a chest, a regular monster, anything. Doesn't even matter. Now, because you have 15 items, that does not give you 15 chances to get a Primal, because the game doesn't say, well, it's 15 items, so I'm going to compare this one to the 15. It doesn't work like that. Once the game checks one item, it resets. It has no memory that that item was ever done. So whether you have 15 items or you have one item, it's still a 0.1% chance that that item will be a Primal. So why I say a group of pooled items doesn't matter is because you're not doing 15 times. It's not 15 chances at 1%. It's 15 individual one-time chances. So that's why people are looking at, I have 15 items, so that's 15 chances. And they're failing to understand that the game doesn't read the items in a pool. It reads them individually, and after that individual item is reset, it has no memory of ever doing that. So it doesn't count 15.
it doesn't count one of those 15 as 15. It counts one of those 15 as one time, and then it resets. So it doesn't care. It has no understanding on how many items you have. It only goes by, do you have an item? So it checks one item. It checks 0.1%, 15 individual times. It doesn't check 0.1% as 15 items. It doesn't check 15 items at 0.1% chance. It doesn't work like that. It checks each item individually one time and resets. So it doesn't matter whether you have 15 items or 100 items. Going through it that many times does not increase 0.1% chance from happening. To further explain this, I'm going to use a deck of cards because this is something that a lot of people, if you're already at this point, you're going to probably be lost if your mind is already set that you're still looking at a pool of 15 items. In order for you to increase the chance of getting a primal, you have to increase the chance that the primal shows up. So the chance a primal shows up is 0.1%, and that's it. Every item has a 0.1% chance. Going through more items doesn't increase your chances just because you're going through more items, because the chance itself is still 0.1% against every item individually. It's not, again, I'm using 15 as the base number here. If you're going to say your chances increase because you go by more items, that would mean that the game keeps adding a number to the percent that a primal would show up. So it would start as 0.1%. To increase the chances, you would have to say, after going through 2 items, the game is now increasing 0.1% to 0.2%. The only way to increase your chances on getting a primal is to increase the actual appearance rate percent that Blizzard has programmed into the game. The appearance rate is 0.1%, and that never changes. The amount of items don't change it from 0.1%. If you're using 15 items, it doesn't go from 0.1% up to 0.15%. That's what people are saying when they're saying, I get more chances to do it. No. Attempts are not chance. Chance is 0.1%. So let me explain this by using a deck of cards. I will use the Jack of Spades as the primal. And we will use the 0.1% chance as the Jack of Spades. There's only one Jack of Spades in the deck. Shuffling that deck 55,000 times does not change the amount of jacks that are in the deck. It doesn't. It's not 55,000 times to get a jack. It's one jack, one time every time you shuffle it. People are like, oh, there's multiple decks of cards. No, there aren't multiple decks of cards because the items you're not using the items as the primal. You're using the appearance rate against the items. So there's a difference between saying 15 items are the primal chance and the primal chance to show up is 0.1% chance, which is in the game code. So let me further explain. The proper way, the only way that you can increase your chances on a primal on showing up using the deck of cards is you shuffle the deck and you pull a card out. Actually, I'll get a deck of cards right now. This is a deck of cards, okay? I'm going to show the Jack of Spades. This Jack of Spades is the primal. Yeah, no matter how many times I shuffle this deck and attempt to pull the Jack of Spades out of here, doesn't change that there's only one Jack in the deck. This is the chance. If you're going to say, I increase the chances of pulling the Jack, you have to add more Jacks to the deck while keeping the amount of cards the same. So in this particular case, you take the Jack and you shuffle it into the deck. This is, now we'll do this 5 times because we'll say this, but this is multiplied, this is still the same thing as having it 15 times. So this would be one of the 15 items that becomes a primal. You shuffle it, you pull it out. If it's not the Jack, you put it back in and you attempt to shuffle the deck again. Now guess what?
It's been reset. There is no change in this except for the set. So the first item is now gone. Now you're down to 4 items. You shuffle the deck and you attempt to pull it again. It's not a jack of spades. You put it back in, now you have 3 chances. How many times you attempt to get the jack does not increase your chances on pulling the jack. It only increases the attempts you get to get the jack. The actual way to increase the jack, the increase of pulling the jack, is by taking a second deck of cards, taking 5 decks of cards, and pulling the jack of spades out of 5 decks of cards. Oh, sorry, out of 4 decks of cards. And then when you go to pull the deck, when you go to pull this, the card out, if this is not the jack, you remove this from the actual deck, and then you would take a jack, we'll say this is the jack, and then you put the jack in. So now this deck has 2 jack of spades in it. Now, on the next shuffle, you have actually increased your chance to pull the jack because there's more than 1 jack to pull. If you go to pull it out and it's not a jack, you remove this from the deck, you take one of the other ones and you put it into there. Now there's 3 jacks in this deck. Once you start increasing the amount of jacks in a single deck while keeping the amount the same, now you've increased your chances to get the jack. But if there's only 1 jack in the deck and you shuffle it and attempt to pull the jack and it's not the jack, guess what? On the next shuffle, you haven't increased your chances just because you're attempting it again because there's still only 1 jack in the deck. So without increasing the actual amount of jacks in the deck, you are not, it doesn't matter how many times you shuffle the deck and attempt to pull the card out. If you don't increase the jacks that are in the deck, the amount of them, you will never increase your chances. And people think because you have more attempts that you're going to go for it. Now, you apply what I just said to how the game pulls primals. The chance to pull a primal is 0.1%. That never changes. That is the jack in the deck. It doesn't matter if you shuffle the deck and pull it 1 billion times. It's 0.1%. You cannot increase your chances on pulling a primal because you go through more items unless you increase the actual 0.1% into a higher number that says that the primal will show up. That is how primals are obtained. Now, even though that's the math and that's the way to look at it, I'm going to use a very simple in-game situation that proves going through more items or time played or how many times you reforge something has no relevance to whether or not people get a primal. And that is simply by saying, using the comment that people say about, bots go through more items, so obviously they have primals, or, somebody played 2,000 hours and they have primals. None of that changes 0.1% chance. The game doesn't say because you've played for 18 hours that I'm going to change 0.1% into 0.18% because the chance goes up the longer I play. Which basically brings me to another point, which I'll get to after this. But to put the situation very simple, people are saying that all somebody has to do is play a certain amount of time, and then automatically they get a primal. Or 1 out of every 400 items is guaranteed you will get a primal every time you go through 400 legendaries. One of them is going to be a primal. Those are all false, and that is simply proven because of the in-game situation. You can try to take math and apply it all that, but none of that shit matters. The very simplified process is this. If all it took was time played or going through enough items, 99% of the Diablo players who've played for 13 seasons would have every single primal in the entire game. Simply because when people say time, because bots are using time played because they play more and go through more items, you gotta seriously try to tell me, and this is why I find it amusing how people can't even apply their own situations. They contradict themselves. But the amount of time a bot's played, somebody would have exceeded that throughout,
all of the seasons. You don't think that somebody going through 5 seasons is going to equate the same exact amount of items a bot goes through, or the time played a bot goes through if they've already played 5 seasons? Wrong. You can't apply time played as well as items gone and or items going through, and that's how bots are getting primals, without applying that to somebody who's gone through 5 seasons. The people who've gone through 5 seasons would have every single primal if bots were getting primals and people were getting primals simply by playing longer and going through more items. That cannot be removed from the equation. And the simple fact is, you can go through an entire season and never get a single primal, while somebody goes through half a season and gets 19 primals. Time played has no factor and doesn't change. It does not increase, it does not make you get primals better. Period. That's not how it works. And that situation about somebody going through 5 seasons, you don't have to be in season for time played. Now that brings me to the following point. So before I get into the last point here, I just want to quickly recap that. People saying a bot has primals, or somebody has primals, or a team has primals because they play longer and go through more items is false, because somebody playing 5 seasons would have exceeded the amount of time a bot plays in a season as well as how many items. And everybody at that point would have every primal in the game. So the simple fact that people even after 5 seasons don't have every primal in the game or barely have any at all disproves people trying to say playing longer and going through more items is guaranteed to get you primals or has a higher chance of getting primals. It is a false statement, and it's a piece of misinformation. Now, despite I just proved that because of the situation in the game itself disproves that. The fact that people going through 5 seasons barely have any primals or none at all prove time played and how many items you go through does not increase your chances of getting a primal. It has no factor on it whatsoever. Like I said, if it did, people after 5 seasons would have every primal in the entire game, because they would have exceeded the amount of time played and exceeded the amount of items bots go through in a season. It's base fact. Now, that brings me to the next point, as gamers will try to manipulate wording and definitions to words to fit their argument rather than actually use the definitions to apply to their argument. So here's what I'm getting at. Okay, gamers love to... I'm going to use time played here, because this is the other part of the situation that I can say that people will argue, that people will say, well, time played, all you have to do is wait long enough and then automatically you'll get a primal. That's what people are saying when you say time played. You can't say, oh, it doesn't work like that. Either you're saying time played accumulates time, so it automatically gives you a primal, or it doesn't. You can't say that statement without applying what I'm about to say. And then if I do apply it, you say, no, it doesn't work like that, because now you're contradicting yourself. So the definition of time played is determined by the game, not the gamers, and not how gamers want time played to be. Because time played simply means the game starts recording time played the instant you log in. Sitting in the menu, because I'm logged in, this is time played. What I'm doing now is time played. Gamers will argue that's not playing. They'll try to manipulate time played. The simple fact is, they're trying to manipulate what they want time played to mean in order to fit their argument. But the base fact is this. Time played is determined by how the game records the time, not how a gamer decides they want it to say. So, this is what this comes down to. If time played is what determines people getting primal, and or the number of items gone through, then all somebody would have to do is sit in the lobby, let enough time go by, and then the instant they go to do a bounty and reforge an item, it's automatically going to be a primal. Because that's what people are saying when you say time played. You can't use your own definition of time played to try to base your argument off of, and then remove how the game actually determines time played. So, when you say time played, you are saying the time somebody logs in, Not when they're moving around the game. Not when you say, well, you know, you have to be moving around. Wrong. That's people trying to manipulate how they want time played to be defined as this. And by the way, you absolutely can get primals just by sitting in town. I've done it. If I complete GR70 solo, it unlocks the ability, anybody that completes GR70 solo unlocks the ability for time for primal to be unlocked. I have sat in town during bounty games where, you know, I'm just sitting in town. And when somebody turned the bounty in and I got the chest, I opened that fucking chest and there was a primal in it. So anybody trying to state you can't get primals by sitting in town has no fucking idea what they're talking about, because primals don't come from playing. They come from when the game fucking decides, or if you want to use term, playing. Primals don't come from fucking how many items you go through. They come from whenever the game decides to give them to you under the 0.1% chance factor. Now, as far as playing longer gets you primals, that's also false, because let me go into the game here and I'm going to show you what I have. Okay? When I am right now on a different region. Okay? So this isn't even my other region. I had to start from scratch. I had nothing. No Paragon level, no nothing. Literally, this was from level 1 in this season. I've done on 2 regions. If you go to a different region, you have nothing from the previous region, and the previous region doesn't affect the other regions. So let me start off by showing when I first started this region. I have not even been in this region that long at all. I haven't been in this region at all, so I haven't had it barely any time played, and I've barely gone through any items. Primal and Primal. Both usable, mind you. So, again, not only does the fact that time played doesn't alter you getting... Time played, the amount of items you go through doesn't alter. This literally was my first fucking primal after I actually got to 70 on my necromancer. This dropped on my necromancer. This dropped from my necromancer. And I forget where I got it from, but I had literally only played maybe 6 hours max before this dropped. So again, time played doesn't factor into you getting primal. So I'm going to end this part of the stream now because I got to get my daughter off of the bus. And then when I come back, I will go over items in a rift and how people don't know how to apply math correctly to the game, and because they're using information that some idiot that put up on a website is using that's wrong. So everybody's basically getting wrong information. And I will prove this by actually using a math problem that was given to people who think like this to prove that the way they're doing the math is incorrectly. So this isn't even like I'm using something in the game. This is actually using a math problem and showing that the way people think will get the problem wrong. Because like I said, when I come back, I'll explain this and I'll explain the entire situation and I'll give the math problem. I just want to clear up before I get into that and before I end this that the math problem I'm going to go over was given to people who think math is done the certain way, the way they do in the game. And every single person who did the problem that way that people think it's done is wrong. Now, these are the same people who were trying to argue with me on how math is done in the game. And and this is again, no matter how many times you put the logic out there or the facts or anything else, they will still tell you you're wrong because they either can't accept it or they're so brainwashed from the people feeding the misinformation that it's gone beyond the point where it's too late for them to even, I got to get my daughter off the bus. It's too late for them to even go back. So this is more so for the people who actually want to step back and realize that when you apply math to a problem, it must be applied correctly and fully and not half-assed in the way you're looking at it. Otherwise, the result is going to be wrong. It can be totally logical to you, but it's not going to change the fact that it's wrong. So again, I'll be using an actual math problem that was given to people who think the way the players in this game think math works, and every one of them got it wrong. So, all right, I'm going to end this stream. This is TL Gamer signing off. Thanks for tuning in.